Thank you all so much for being part of this breakout session. It's really a delight of mine to be able to talk about this group that's up here. I'm Phil Marshall. I'm the CEO of Hospice Health. Here we cover 27 counties now in Kentucky, and soon it'll be 14 counties in southern Indiana, primarily with hospice care. You know us as Hospice Health. We were Hospice of Louisville and Hospice of Southern Indiana. Now we're also doing we have an MD, MP consult service where we go out and talk to families that aren't quite ready to talk about the H word, hospice, or palliative care, which now oftentimes is related to that. And so we're able to go out and assess the patients and then refer them to great people like Mary, Adrian, and other long-term care facilities, and then work with the family. So we're doing a lot more things. I'm delighted to be here because this goes way back with getting the Thrive Center started when John Reinhardt and Joe Steyer brought Signature Healthcare back to their hometown. They were given an award to start an innovation project, I would call it, I guess. John could talk a lot more about that. And it took several years to get there, but we got it over the finish line, and now a lot of exciting things to talk about, not only related to the Thrive Center downtown, but also what we're calling the Thrive Alliance, which is a group of long-term care, nonprofit, large long-term care organizations like Masonic, like Nazareth Homes. They have in their group a large group from Iowa, one from Minneapolis, one from Texas, Colorado, California, all banding together in this Thrive Alliance, and then that ties back into the Thrive Center. And so I will read from the text here a little bit. The actual name of this is called Solving Challenges and Scaling Solutions. And so that's really been the purpose of this group, is to be able to look at new technologies that are going to help us, whether it's at home, in long-term care, in homes, wherever that may be, and then fast track that technology. So I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And the validation provided by leading senior living organizations that operate in multiple geographies, as I said, across the United States, representing an unparalleled real-world seal of approval for longevity economy solutions. That's a mouthful, but they really are trying to work on solutions that'll be great for the patient and their families and the caregivers that are helping them. Today, they're going to share their perspectives, lessons learned, and insights around innovation, and discuss their collaborative efforts aimed at identifying, validating scalable products, service models, and technologies focused on the longevity economy, which is also great for our entrepreneurs here in this region. Having known and worked alongside almost all of them, I don't know Adrian as well, but I know his brother well, and Gary Marsh, the predecessor. So, but I want to welcome Sherry Rose. I want to welcome Adrian Judy, Mary Haynes, and John Reinhardt. I was going to welcome to the stage, but they're already sitting here. So why don't we give them a round of applause for being on our panel.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil. So I'm the illustrious moderator for this wonderful group. My work in health tech goes back into the late 90s. I had a flashback at lunch because in 2004, thereabouts, Genscape and our earlier health tech company, Advanced Imaging Concepts, both exited in the same month, and it was one of the really great success stories for entrepreneurship in Louisville. I've also enjoyed being an angel investor and working with the entrepreneurial community, but what we've come to realize is entrepreneurship is a journey, it's not a destination. And so in that vein, we're looking at the pieces that can help quickly commercialize things that are scalable and replicable, and prove and validate things that have merit and efficacy for living well, all right? And so when you think about the city and you think about all the aging innovation work, we love what the Healthcare Council is doing and the large public companies and the big providers here. And then we think about the wonderful stuff that LEAP's doing and the accelerated health and the entrepreneurship and the accelerating stages. What our group focuses on is really that post-accelerator market validation, market viability category. And so we have two pieces of the puzzle today. We'll mention a little bit. I'm going to let the group introduce themselves, and then we'll get their perspectives. I'm an entrepreneurial perspective. If they throw me a challenge, I try to help them find a solution or try to help create a solution. So we've enjoyed that work. But the Alliance, as Phil mentioned, is 10 organizations around the country that are formed together in an LLC to do innovation and collaboration. The Thrive Center is a wonderful actual experiential center. We're going to let Sherry introduce it. But with what I thought we would do is, since I introduced myself a little bit, is we'll introduce each of the panelists, let them give a little bit of their perspective of who they are, their organization, and then we'll go into some examples of innovation and challenges and things we've done. First, I'll go with Mary Haynes.
Good afternoon. I am Mary Haynes, and I'm with Nazareth Home here in Louisville. I think I'd like for this to be the Ellen show, but it looks a little more like Oprah, I think. But nevertheless,
We'll dance, Mary.
mission and sustainability, I think, are always on my mind. And when you think of why we came together as this Thrive Alliance, it was really that. Nazareth Home is what we would call in our landscape a single site. Even though we do have the 2 campuses, we are one organization. And in the scheme of things, we're not large, but we're very innovative, and we believe we're built to last. So how do you find that sustainability? I think all of us here, if you're from Louisville, you have Mr. David Jones on your mind this morning, and he always said, I'm not into perseveration, I'm into innovation. So we're not just out to preserve what we do, but we're here to sustain and make it new and make it meet the marketplace. We do have the 2 campuses. We provide everything that you think of when you think of post-acute care. We have very robust post-acute care. We're in the insurance market. Many of the patients we serve are the ages that all of you all are sitting here and younger. They do happen to be adults. We provide memory support and memory care, end-of-life care, and all the things you think of when you think of nursing home. I'm always comfortable with that word because I am a nurse, and most of what we provide is really what people need in terms of nursing and palliation. We do have independent living and personal care. So we're kind of soup to nuts. We're not as large as Masonic Home or some of the other groups that are in our group, but we all share that mission-driven organization. So when you're a single site like us, we don't have a deep bench. So we look for those relationships with our partners in the Alliance to deepen that bench and widen the scale. And part of what I want to say that we all commit to is to be a test bed. So we don't just sign up to belong, we sign up to take some action and to try to discover what's really going to make all of our missions last.
Great. So Adrian, why don't you introduce Masonic and your role at Masonic? I think you're going to bring an interesting perspective. Mary's the CEO of Nazareth Home and co-chair of the board, and you're one of the leadership members, but on the technology side.
Yeah, so my name's Adrian Judy. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Masonic Homes of Kentucky. I'm a avowed geek, and I'm very passionate about long-term care. I grew up in and around this industry, this profession. And it was my father, excuse me, was the president of the Kentucky Association of Healthcare Facilities when I was growing up. So that was dinner table conversation every night, seems like.
He tended bar for us when he was in college in the hospitality suite. So yes, he's been around a very long time.
I've got
That's what
stories.
they call experience.
I've got stories for sure.
on me, probably.
No, there's, anyway, we'll move on from that. But I'm a licensed nursing home administrator. I've been licensed for over 20 years now. I don't use my license anymore, and I've told Gary Marsh, who was our previous CEO, and Todd Lacey and J. Scott Judy, who are our current leadership, said, I'm not worth what you'd have to pay me to use that thing again. I enjoy what I do. I've always been passionate about technology and about senior care, senior housing, and came to work at Masonic Homes as a contractor about 15 years ago, and really got to marry my 2 passions of technology and seniors. And a little about Masonic Homes, we were founded on innovation. We are the first Masonic home in the world. Masonic Homes Kentucky was founded 152 years ago to help care for the widows and orphans of Masons who died in the Civil War. So we built it up, and it's spread to different states, different countries, to help care for initially the families of Masons, but then as we grew to care for the general public as well. So we provide the full spectrum of care just like Mary does. And we're big fans of Nazareth Home and the work they do. We all work together well. We had orphans on campus up until the late 1980s. With the advent of the foster care system, we got out of that business and didn't know where we were. So we reinvented ourselves in senior housing, turned all those dormitories into senior apartments, and the rest, they say, is history. We've been very, very happy and very successful, and had some very successful customers who sing our praises. So that's the nickel tour.
Perfect. We'll have time to talk about some of the great things you're doing. And if you've never been to either one of the campuses, you have a different perception of what senior living and actual facilities are. But now to our longstanding friend and partner, Sherry Rose. She's a technology executive. Maybe tell a little bit about your transition, but she wanted to be legacy-minded and purposeful in her career outside of her first profession, I guess. And she's done an incredible job bringing to light what was an idea of an experiential Thrive Center. And kind of tell us a little bit about how you got there, what you do there, and sort of what your passion is for what the center does.
Well, I'm actually a retiree of AT&T, so I've been around technology all my life. I always say if I go into Nazareth or I go into Masonic, it's likely going to be my daughters who are shopping for me. And when I come to your facility, I'm going to come with my smartphone, my smart tablet, my wearable, my Alexa device, my Samsung smart remote TV operator, and I'm going to expect you to be able to serve that. However, I'll look at my daughters who knew nothing but technology, and they're going to demand it. So we have to get ready for innovation, especially when we look at 76 million baby boomers who are aging. I am one. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. I've never worked in a community, but I've cared for aging parents. And just recently lost my mother to Alzheimer's disease. So I understand the stress of caregiving, and I also understand what goes into caring for someone. And I have to tell you, nothing teaches you more than caring for a family member. You learn a tremendous amount. And it's really helped me as I've looked at technologies. And so when we opened our doors in November of 2017, we had no idea who would come through those doors. But I have to tell you, we sat down and we did our annual report, and I looked at it and I thought, there's where my time went, because we had organizations from 28 different states and 9 different countries in the first year come through our doors looking for innovative solutions. And I'll always tell you as well that we have to balance technology with the human touch, because technology is an enabler. I've always known that coming out of AT&T. I had the government, the GEM account. It was government education and medical. Nobody cared what I put in the ground. What they cared about was having access to those applications. They wanted to know that when they accessed their immunization records, that it was there and it was online. And so we look at technology as an enabler. And as we call the Thrive Center the front door to innovation. So when they come through our doors, they're looking to get into your doors. And we try and make some introductions, but we do a lot of mentoring in there because we get so many that don't understand the aging care ecosystem. And I'll stop there because you're probably going to ask us some questions, but
Maybe.
That's how I got from AT&T into the Thrive Center. I work for a passion. It's not a career.
So let's talk about flashing back to a breakfast in late 2017, and we have a reporter in town, and Phil's with me, and Mary's with me, and I know Gary Marsh from Masonic was with me, and the reporters has the one question that I think we've all been rallying around: why Louisville? Why aging innovation? Why here? Why does this make sense? I sort of personally tackled it when Signature asked me to look at where to move the headquarters out of Florida, and I was Chief Innovation Officer and worked with a lot of their buildings and a lot of their leaders here. And I got convinced that there was something special here. Maybe for the group, maybe comment about what you think about Louisville and innovation in Louisville and our pieces to the ecosystem here, and why you think it has a bright future for all of us, because I think you all do feel pretty good, right? I mean, no? You don't?
Well, of course, we're all proud to be here in Louisville, and I know that we have many of us that are engaged in the same endeavor. I think that, however, for me or for Nazareth Home, what pushes us to innovate is really the reality of the crush of the work that we're doing. We are skilled nursing, even though we have these other avenues. We are skilled nursing. We are the place that no one really wants to go, and we have to really hustle to make it an environment where people want to be. So when you think about what we offer to the community, I think it's sacred, it's important, it needs to happen, but it is at risk all the time because the expenses and risk go up, the revenue is somewhat flat, and the expectations of the people we serve are higher than they've ever been, and the workforce is extremely distressed. So it is in that fact, in that situation, that I think we are all motivated to innovate, to take risk, and that's why we do what we do. And for me, when our board asks me what keeps me up at night, it's really not the reimbursement, it's really how do you feel that team? How do we keep people and honor the people who do the work? So it's really from the workplace innovation that keeps me at this table and keeps me pushing forward. So I can
That's a great.
talk about any
Yeah,
of that.
yeah. I was going to say, why don't you go ahead and give us some sort of workforce innovations that make sense.
So about 3 years ago, Sherry, one of the things that Sherry does to keep her motivated, and now I'm on that journey with her, is to take a trip annually to Silicon Valley. And it's interesting, I do want to throw in that the 3 companies that you heard talked about this morning from the hatchery with AARP, Sherry and I have been at the table with all of those companies, and the first company, SingFit, we use at Nazareth Home, and I've had it in place now for 3 years. But so we interacted with a young company, a brand new company called PayActive. Has anybody here heard of PayActive? Okay, PayActive is a payroll adaptation that allows the worker to draw down their worked yet unpaid income. So 3 years ago, we expanded at Nazareth Home. We took our model, bought Sacred Heart Village. It was a very different culture. From everything was different there, and they used a lot of nurse agency. And I'd been walking the halls trying to talk with staff on, hey, you must like it here. I see you here all the time. How come you don't work for us? Why do you work for the agency? And to a person, they would tell me, hey, Mary, yeah, we really like it here, but I want to get paid the day that I work. Well, payroll systems in the United States of America just aren't set up to do that. So that was on my mind when Sherry and I traveled to California, and we met this company that said, hey, we do this. So I immediately said, hey, I'm in. I want this. Well, then, of course, I had to come back. And I don't know if anybody out there is HR or payroll, but anyway, I had to come back. And but to the team's credit, they're like, hey, this would really help. So now, all these years later, we've moved about $2 million through this program. We have about 400 employees, 183 of them are signed up in this payroll method. The average rate of pay for them is $17.25, so it's not folks. I just want to bust that myth for you, because the New York Times reports that 40% of Americans can't write an unexpected check for $400. So workforce is key to making anything happen and to make it sustain and to make it right for everyone, so that engagement, the empowerment, the dignity that something like this offers has been essential for an organization like ours.
Well, and anecdotally, you were the star in their nationwide publication that went out. You can maybe mention that because that's a great view out on YouTube.
I told the Wall Street Journal just what I told you a few weeks ago. We were on the front page of their business section, and yes, there is a documentary that features not just us, it features Walmart. We were their customer before Walmart became their customer, which is why we do get some props for taking that risk with them. But we take risk when they work for people, because people is what we're all about. We're relationship in everything that we do. So it is that empowerment, engagement, and the dignity of all people that we're committed to.
And I think the company will tell you real quick too, and then we'll get to you, that the Alliance members were the first aging care companies in the country to use the service. And so they are now, multi-hundreds of sites and companies, but Masonic was also, you want to make a
Yeah, I would say
So
Mary was the
back to Louisville,
first.
So I also came back and told all of my friends, we have to do this too. So I do think that's what John's talking about when he's talking about the ecosystem, is I do think that's one thing about Louisville and Kentucky, is that we are smart enough to share good stuff.
Yeah, and Mary was the first company in healthcare to work with PayActive. We were the second. It was the first company we ran through the Innovators Alliance. Single greatest innovation we've put in at Masonic Homes since I've been there. Just the impacts had on our workforce has been tremendous. The stability, the happiness of our staff and coming to work and staying at work and not having to worry about how to pay for that next bill that comes up. And that's something that through the Innovators Alliance, we've been able to help generate funds to continue our mission. So if you're interested in doing that, please see John. He can get you signed up for it. So we'll do that. But it's one of the great success stories we've had in our early startup with the Innovators Alliance.
Yeah, so maybe what we could do is, going back to Sherry, if you were an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, you wouldn't think you'd start in Louisville, Kentucky with the nonprofit. You'd think you'd start with the for-profits or somebody here in town. But there needs to be this validation, this proof, this get out there, see what you have. I always call it every band started on a stage somewhere, right? So they had to tell us a little bit about another market leader, or one or two. I'm thinking Embodied Labs, but somebody that sort of came early to the Thrive Center that's really doing demonstrative stuff that you and the team coach, guided, that the providers weighed in. Tell us a little bit more how it works and how you introduce the providers and sort of what's in it for the companies.
Well, I'll talk about one, and then I'll also, so what I'll tell you about PayActive is I was actually introduced to them through another entrepreneur. And that was Virtue Sense Technology, and their founder called me one day and said, will you talk to my friend Sohail and see if there's even a market for him in senior care? I'm like, oh my gosh, and look at CNAs and low pay and driving a workforce. And so that's when we were in Silicon Valley. He was out of San Jose. He said, can I come down and take you to dinner? Now, I know my skills and my strengths. Mary was with me. I said, you do HR. You're going to go to this dinner with me, and we're going to talk to him. Dr. Brodsky's sitting out here. I will tell you, when they come in and it's rehab, I reach out to my lifelines out there. I bring Bellerman in to talk about PT and the movement sciences, and because I think that's how we have to connect innovation. And but one of the other ones outside of PayActive, as John mentioned, was Embodied Labs. Met them early on. 31-year-old founder, picked her up from the airport, and I looked at her and I said, how did you get into this? My daughters are 30. And here you are, 31-year-old founder of this company. And she had a story. Her mother had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And Carrie wanted others to be able to know what she had to learn in caring for her mother. And she said, it was very difficult coming into that. She said, at first, I pushed away from it and I went to the Peace Corps. And then she came back and she helped her father take care of her mother in the last years of her life. And she went out to LA. She was a UNC grad. She went out to LA, partnered with someone on virtual reality, and she created Embodied Labs. We've watched her grow. It's funny, I was in Silicon Valley here earlier in the year, and she was up on the stage, and it was kind of her red carpet walk, they called it. And they said, bring people to the stage that have helped you. And I said, and I'd just taken a bite of blackberries or something. I said, I didn't know she was going to do this. I thought I probably had blackberry seeds in my teeth as she called me up to the stage. But you become a proud mom and working with some of these entrepreneurs. Carrie got a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant for $250,000, and she continues to build out. It's a great training tool. But we see so many different innovations that come through there, and we connect them as well, because it's hard for a lot of these startup companies to come in and knock on your doors and to get in and talk to you about their product. We do a lot of mentoring in there. We kind of vet them out ahead of turning them over to maybe a Mary or a Adrian to take a look at what the product is, and we have a scoring tool where we can score them. But when we looked at our pillars, coming out of a year, looked at what do we really do? What do we do? What do we accomplish in 1 year of being in the Thrive Center? And we came up with 4 pillars. And this gets to John talking about how we vet them out. The first pillar is on innovation. And that's where the entrepreneur comes in, maybe has a great idea. We maybe have to mentor them a little bit about the aging care ecosystem. And then we looked at research. And now we have a lot of universities who are reaching out to us and saying, well, you're the link to industry that we don't have. That's what these players bring to the table as the Innovators Alliance, because they know that they're in the industry. They may come up with research, but how do you commercialize it? So there was the research pillar, and then we looked at the third one was it's investment. So we get a lot of investors who come through Endeavor here in town, Ziegler, and they'll say, what do you like about this company? What do you like about that company? And we have to be good stewards of investment dollars. If you were an entrepreneur, wouldn't you want to know early on that that product was not going to make it to market? And you need to pivot. And so now we're looking at even bringing in more focus groups to give them some feedback. And then the fourth pillar was on distribution. A lot of these companies, they're just trying to control a burn rate, but to connect them to the CDWs and the Samsungs and the Medlines and people that can help scale them, that's where they want to go, and that's where they need to get for a national sales force. So that's how we came up with solving challenges and scaling solutions.
And I think it's pretty obvious why the entrepreneurs would want to be involved in this. There's no downside to them, really. They get the exposure, they get in front of people who are willing to listen. I think probably what most people are wondering is what's in it for us as providers and the profession as a whole. I know for me personally, and probably for anybody who has an article out there with your name in it or a LinkedIn profile, you get people calling you all the time saying, hey, I've got this product, or we want you to try, we want you to demo. I don't have enough time in my day to do a tenth of the calls I get and do my current day job. So it's a great means for us to say, hey, I know you got a great product out there. Why don't you take that to the Innovators Alliance, go to the scoring tool on the website. It gives them some place to go. It gives me a good, responsible answer to where I don't feel bad about just blowing off the call. And it gives us the opportunity to get that entrepreneur in the beginning of their product development cycle and help them craft it so it's better suited for our needs as providers. And I go back to one of the examples I was talking to John about earlier. I was speaking at a conference in Virginia, and they had something, they had a think tank or senior projects, I guess, for Virginia Tech students. And one of the kids in there, he had a wander management bracelet that he had developed. It was all kind of pie in the sky, but it was what he wanted to do with it. It had GPS and it had health monitoring and everything you could want, but it was an open bracelet, kind of like a woman's bangle bracelet. And I said, well, it looks great, but it's open. Is there a way to lock that on? He said, no, in our research, we found out that memory care people don't want things locked on their wrist. And I'm thinking, as a provider, if I've got a memory care person and they can take it off, it's useless. If they can take off their GPS or not get the vitals that we're wanting to get from that device, it makes no difference. Now, if we can interact with him and get it crafted to where it's useful, then everyone wins.
Perfect. So let's go a little bit to a processed approach, or a what levels of companies the Alliance looks at, Mary, because I think we heard from Adrian, the door gets knocked on a lot, go into trade shows and you can find everybody wants to get your attention, and you and I often have talks that you balance that, you want to encourage, you want to educate, you want to give feedback. Where's the starting point for this sort of network, this ecosystem that the Alliance and Center do, and how's that sort of determined, and what are the benchmarks? Because it's not just that the product work.
Right. Well, we're not accelerators. Is that what is that where you're going?
Well, yeah, but it's not just the product works, it's the business model, it's the marketability.
So it is the business model, and like Adrian said, I mean, the world is full of so many smart people. And the session I was just in had the aging tsunami. You heard Adrian mention the longevity marketplace. People look at what we do and they're like, wow, I'd like to get into that, because guess what? There's going to be a lot of people aging out, right? And there's not that many caregivers, so what's going to be in that gap? So the space is very crowded with a lot of technologies, a lot of care management devices. The fact is, many of them are very much alike. The differentiators among these classes are very slim. So what we have to look at is what John is saying. What's the leadership of that company? How open are they to the feedback? Are they willing for us to be a test bed? How quickly could they commercialize it? We do have a large distribution channel among these 10 CCRCs. So would it only work for one? Do we think it might work for 50% of us? Just what is their solution, and how can we help them scale to where then everybody wins? So close to commercialization.
How important is who pays for it to you all?
Well, it's like it's like my husband and Mary Furlong always say, that looks really great, but how are you going to pay for it? And that's the other piece that I think where entrepreneurs really need help from people that are in this space, because a lot of these products are great, but there's no reimbursement for them, certainly on the skilled nursing side. And there's not a lot of reimbursement for them yet in home either. So that's where we need that public policy piece, which we haven't really talked about up here, but is so critical. So there has to be a pay for.
And one of the things that we respect from the Alliance members, especially your ability to get grants and do demonstration projects. Maybe mention a couple of those,
all right.
because I think that's a really good example.
I had that on my list.
Awesome.
So
I like to hit your list items.
Yeah,
That's really, I like that.
I had that on my list. So thanks for asking. So back to those empowerment and engagement words. Well, that works for elders and families too, who are living with us. And so social engagement, we've all heard a lot about social engagement as the antidote to isolation, and certainly in our space to the depression and those sorts of things that really disable folks who could be aging quite well if it weren't for that. So as I said earlier, the world doesn't really love the nursing home sometimes, and the regulatory process is pretty heavy, and fines are created. And so here in Kentucky, there's a big fund. It's called the Civil Money Penalty Fund, and right now it has $34 million sitting in it. So people like us are always trying to, what can we do to have that money fund something that's going on in the long-term care center. So recently we received support to implement a social engagement technology called It's Never Too Late. And it's a variety of smart TV, tablet. One of the things that we're very passionate about and what we wrote our grant around and how we're using it is to continue individuals who have made palliative choices to continue to make their choices. And to also have, I don't know if anyone has a family member who's living in a congregate living setting or is in a nursing care center that is diminished. Sometimes visiting, it's like, what are we going to do? You can only talk about lunch so long. So how can we make that meaningful? That's always been a quest that we've been on at Nazareth Home, is how can we make every moment matter? Where's the meaning for that moment? So that's what we're really doing with the IN2L and the tablet. It revolves around a life story and really cues everyone in to how we're going to spend our time together and what's going to be that hookup and then what's going to be that takeaway. Because as I'm sure would happen with each of us, we think we know our parents, but we really don't. And once they start writing down who they were and who they see themselves and they get those stories, we're all going to learn something. And to date, with this grant and creation of this legacy product that we can deliver to a family once that person goes to God, it is amazing. So that sort of company that we can find, that we can build those experiences and then help them scale, it's an awesome place to be.
Thanks. And we kudos to Mary. She's co-chair of the board of us, but she's rallying the groups to really formalize their pilot commitments, because it's enough to say you talk about it, you think about it, you might, but she's done a great job helping us get commitments as we go forward to how many things, what kind of dollars they'll pilot. Because without that, it's even with grants, it could be tough. We're going to finish with I'm a homegrown guy. I love the health tech stories that come out of Louisville. My Family Channel, Todd's out there with us. Two of our panelists worked with My Family Channel. I know Thrive Center did some consumer feedback, and Todd mentioned it, I guess, in his talk. And I know you're one of the first installs, or maybe the first install.
Yeah,
Masonic is.
Todd could speak to that. We were among the first installs,
Yeah.
I think.
So maybe talk about usability and consumer influence to products, because we hear consumerism, but there's no entrepreneur out there, at least that I've coached reasonably, that thinks they're going to go to 78 million seniors with a sales force and knock on doors. So it's really going to go through providers, no matter how you look at it. But talk about what we've learned from seniors experiencing products, and maybe specifically a little bit My Family Channel and usability.
Yeah, the usability, and I'll talk specifically about My Family Channel. We have another competing product in our independent living space that uses a tablet technology where the seniors can read the newspaper, can get the community events, message back and forth with family. We decided not to go that route in our assisted living just because it might be too much for people in an assisted living to keep up with that tablet and to learn how to use it if they weren't familiar with technology at all. So in comes My Family Channel, and what we've found with that is how much it brings people talking on the same platform, meaning that when my kids go talk to grandma, they don't call her on the phone. They don't write her a letter. I don't think anybody writes letters, but they don't write her a letter anymore. That's how grandma's used to talking to people. My kids text. So when you go into an assisted living and you don't have your cell phone, or maybe you never had a cell phone, how do those kids communicate with their grandparents? How do the grandparents communicate back? And My Family Channel gives a venue to where you can text pictures to your grandparents. You can send text messages saying, "Hey, we're here. Hey, we're coming. Hope you had a happy day. What's going on?" And really keep the family involved in that senior's life. And that's a big deal, being able to communicate on the same level as the people you want to hear from.
Perfect. And maybe not just My Family Channel, but consumers in general, on how we engage them at the center, and even with that example, but more importantly, they get excited, I think. I've seen them down there. They're real excited.
Oh, yeah. We actually bring in, actually, it's a lot of the Masonic residents who come in, and we'll put them in front of CEOs from organizations across the U.S., and they're so brutally honest in how they will use the technology. And their stories are so funny. They're 92, 90, 88, 85-year-olds. And so if we think that an older adult will not use technology, we're mistaken, because they absolutely will. We have to look at technologies that are friendly and easy for them to use. But they love technologies. But the one story I'll tell you is the Pioneer Network was here in town about a month ago. And so I had a group, we hosted 2 days of sessions with the Pioneer Network. And so I had a group that was there, and I was talking about wearables and the importance. It's not the wearable, it's the analytics that are captured from the wearable. And I had a gentleman who was in the group, and he looked at me and he said, you know, I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And he said, I use the Libre system, which is for diabetics. And he said, it's a needle fits on the back of my arm, because he said, I don't remember to check my blood glucose. I don't know when to give myself insulin or how much insulin to give. And you look at a diabetic population and the amount of diabetes in the U.S., and to look at apps like that could actually help that person with dementia. And so after we finished the tour, he came up and he talked to me and he said, could you help me? He said, no one ever asked us about what they're implementing and what they're innovating. And he said, I would love to engage in what technology is being developed. And so actually I got an email, so I'm working on that. I promised him. I said, yes, we'll bring you to the table, because that's important information to get that feedback. So I reached out to the Pioneer Network, and I've got a contact at the National Dementia Alliance. And we're going to do some work with them on helping give good feedback to entrepreneurs who come in, and they're all working on dementia apps. But to get that focus group and good feedback to them, I think is extremely important, and they are anxious to give it.
Well, and I think as we wrap up, and we can have the panelists stick around for questions and engage with you, but one of the couple lessons learned, I think, over the time is you thrive, it's living your best life wherever you're living, right? And so it's nice to have multidimensional living partners, so we know that it's not just one setting where you live. And then the second thing I think we've learned is aging's a team sport. Everybody's going to age, right? Unfortunately for me, it's a little earlier on my hips than I like, or you're out. But the key also is we're all caregivers, right? So we're caring for elderly families. But we don't forget at the Thrive Center what we do, that it's becoming a younger audience, and there's also an awful lot. Our son is CP. We've been age-friendly a long time at home. I just didn't know what to call it, right? So I think we got to look at this economic opportunity. We hear the longevity economy, $7.2 trillion of economic spend. That's to thrive well. And I think Louisville's an unparalleled place. It's an unparalleled time. The energy's great. I think the future's bright. And I look forward to seeing where we go from here. So thank you to the panelists. Do you all have any closing comments? We got a couple.
I would just say, there's no such thing as a hole in your side of the canoe. And we all realize that we're all in the same canoe up here, so we want to make sure that we fix the canoe. We make sure it's water holds water for the silver tsunami that's coming.
Ageism is something to always be mindful of, and I want to echo what John said. I always said that when we made this announcement, Louisville's going to be an age-friendly city. I'm like, why can't it just be a friendly city? Because we all have the same needs. If it affects my mom, it affects me. If it affects my mom and me, it affects my daughter. So I think as we think about aging in America in this longevity market, it touches so many lives. It's not only one life. So let's not be narrow, let's be wide, let's be kind, and let's always be looking at that user interface and making it friendly for all people. Thanks.
Quick, how many people have been to Thrive? If you haven't been, please go. Sherry, we'd love to have you. We thank you for the opportunity. We thank David Bushman. It's a great event, and we appreciate being involved in it.